A very good morning. You're watching World News, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. As the year slowly draws to a close, Ukraine is focused on one thing: putting an end to the war. President Zelenskyy took to social media to reaffirm that while this goal may seem unattainable for now, Ukraine must remain committed to training military personnel to the best of its ability.
There's a lot of discussion in the media about lowering the draft age for Ukrainians to go to the front lines. We must focus on equipping existing brigades and training personnel to use this equipment. We must not compensate for the lack of equipment and training with the youth of soldiers. The priority should be providing missiles and lowering Russia's military potential, not Ukraine's draft age. The goal should be to preserve as many lives as possible, not preserve weapons in storage. The most important thing is to work together on how to end this war. That is our top priority.
Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has met with Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration, Olha Stefanishyna. Posting on X, the Polish Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the two leaders were set to discuss key priorities in Ukraine's ongoing European integration talks, alongside other issues, including financial and military aid for Kyiv. In a separate post, Stefanishyna added that the meeting also covered Ukraine's NATO integration as well as the potential use of Russia's frozen financial assets. The Ukrainian official added that the upcoming Polish presidency of the EU Council is an opportunity to, quote, pay special attention to the issue of integration. Poland is set to take over the reins in the Council on January 1st of 2025. Protesters in Tibilisi took to the streets for another night in a row, demanding a rerun of the contested parliamentary elections and a return to further integration with the EU. The thousands that gathered in front of the Georgian parliament were met by police using tear gas and water cannons. For the 12th consecutive night, protesters in the Georgian capital were calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze. Their anger was also directed towards Bidina Ivanishvili, the founder of the Georgian Dream Party, who had his symbolic coffin burned in front of the parliament building. Since the outbreak of the second wave of the protests, Georgian police arrested over 400 people, including journalists. A meeting of a new contact group for strengthening Ukraine is expected later in December. Composed of Kyiv's key partners, including Poland, the group stems from a proposal by German opposition leader Friedrich Merz, who was in Kyiv on Monday. This comes as a wide stream of aid is opening for Ukraine. The EU on Monday greenlit more than €4 billion in funds, while Merz has vowed to bolster Ukraine if he's elected chancellor early next year. The military aid he wants to deliver to Ukraine includes long-range missiles.
Friedrich Merz wants to ramp up support for Kyiv. He believes Berlin can do much more for Ukraine.
We are forcing your country to fight with one hand tied behind your back. This is not our position.
In contrast to Olaf Scholz, Merz is in favor of delivering Taurus long-range missiles to Ukraine and allowing Kyiv to use them to strike military targets in Russia. Merz also wants to create a new contact group for Ukraine, which includes Germany, France, Poland and the United Kingdom. The group may also include Denmark, representing the Nordic countries. And according to opinion polls, Friedrich Merz is the clear frontrunner to become Germany's next chancellor, well ahead of Olaf Scholz, whose Social Democratic Party has seen its support decline since the 2021 elections. Merz's visit to Kyiv comes just days after Chancellor Scholz was there.
The elections are a chance for Ukraine, and the likely victory of the Christian Democratic Union and their candidate for the chancellery, Friedrich Merz, is to the advantage of Ukraine, because the Christian Democrats have been, on the whole, more resolute and more norm-driven than the Social Democrats.
President Zelenskyy talked with the chancellor candidate about security guarantees.
Emmanuel Macron proposed that troops from one country or another could be present on certain Ukrainian territories, which would guarantee our security while Ukraine is not in NATO. But we need to have a clear understanding of when exactly Ukraine will join the European Union and when Ukraine will be in NATO.
EU countries have agreed to send additional €4.1 billion to Ukraine to cover state expenses.
In particular now during the winter, with the ongoing targeting of energy grid and other civilian objects. They are not giving up, and we are going to stand by them.
The US president-elect has said that his country's membership in NATO is dependent on the Europeans' defense spending.
If they're paying their bills, and if I think they're treating us fairly, the answer is absolutely, I'd stay with NATO.
But if not, you would consider the possibility of
absolutely, absolutely.
We can show President Trump both arms spending, the highest among NATO countries, and investment in joint economic and defense activities at the highest level.
The Russian president has decorated veterans and widows of soldiers killed in Ukraine with the Heroes of Russia Gold Star medals.
Putin should think it's time to make peace because he's lost. When you lose 700,000 people, it's time. It's not going to end until there's a peace.
And Ukraine's attacks on Russian troops are not withering. The Ukrainian Security Service has shared video of Kyiv's drones called Sea Babies at work. The drones were reportedly effective in damaging ships and aircraft.
Moving to the Middle East now. Soon after the fall of the Assad regime, Syrians have stormed the notorious Sednaya prison outside Damascus. The facility has been described by international rights watchdogs as Bashar al-Assad's slaughterhouse. Footage surfacing online shows armed men breaking bolts to rusted doors, freeing people held captive by the Assad regime. The Syrian White Helmet groups have said it will take days to fully liberate the prison, as some of the inmates are kept in hard-to-access parts of the facility, 2 or even 3 floors below the ground, and behind electronic locks and hermetically sealed doors. A number of European countries have paused processing asylum applications for Syrians following the seizure of power by rebel forces in Damascus. News that President Bashar al-Assad had fled Syria following more than a decade of civil war was widely celebrated by refugees in Europe. Millions of Syrians left the country to escape the violence, seeking shelter in the EU. Austria, the Netherlands, Norway, Italy, and Germany all announced on Monday that they would suspend Syrian asylum applications. Berlin says it is pausing requests until the political situation in Syria becomes clearer. The U.S. Secretary of State has said that America will be supporting the Syrian people in rebuilding their country. At a Monday awards ceremony organized by the State Department, Anthony Blinken said the United States has clear and enduring interest in the country, among them preventing weapons of mass destruction left in Syria from falling into the wrong hands.
The United States has clear and enduring interests in Syria. We have a strong interest in preventing the reemergence of ISIS, given the death and destruction that it's wrought for so long. We have a clear interest in ensuring that whatever weapons of mass destruction or components are left in Syria do not fall into the wrong hands. We have a clear interest in doing what we can to avoid the fragmentation of Syria, mass migrations from Syria, and, of course, the export of terrorism and extremism. The region and the world have a responsibility to support the Syrian people as they begin to rebuild their country and chart a new direction.
The Prime Minister of Israel has addressed the presence of the Israel Defense Forces in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria. According to Netanyahu, only control of the Golan Heights guarantees safety and sovereignty for Israel. At the same time, the controversial Prime Minister thanked Donald Trump for recognizing the area as Israeli and said it will forever be an inseparable part of the Israeli state.
Together with Defense Minister Israel Katz and with the backing of all cabinet members, I instructed the Israel Defense Forces to seize the buffer zone between us and Syria and the positions controlling and adjacent to it. This also includes part of Mount Hermon called the Syrian Hermon. Today, everyone understands the great importance of our being there, on the Golan, and not at their foot. Our control of the Golan Heights guarantees our security. It guarantees our sovereignty. And on this occasion, I would like to thank my friend, President-elect Donald Trump, for accepting my request to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights in 2019. Today, this historic recognition gains stronger validity and greater importance. The Golan Heights will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to testify for the first time in his corruption court case. He's facing fraud and bribery charges from 3 criminal investigations in a trial that began in 2020. It is alleged Netanyahu granted $500 million in regulatory favors in exchange for positive media coverage, illegally received more than $200,000 in gifts, and introduced legislation in return for favorable coverage. Netanyahu denies all charges and has pleaded not guilty. Israel is pushing on with its military operations in the Golan Heights and across Syria. Overnight, several attacks targeted Homs and Latakia in northern Syria. The airstrikes occurred following the UN's appeal to Israeli authorities for the IDF to withdraw behind lines agreed upon in the 1974 agreement. At the same time, Israeli officials are adamant they're not violating any international law. The Israeli occupation of the Golan Heights has found support from the United States. According to officials from both countries, Israel has every right to defend itself, and control of Golan Heights is a means to that end. Moreover, the fleeing Syrian army abandoned its positions, leaving arms and equipment behind that could later be used by terrorists in their fight against the state of Israel. At the same time, Israeli officials have said the occupation of the Golan Heights will be limited and temporary. At a briefing on Monday evening, U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the U.S. supports Israel's limited and temporary incursion into the Golan Heights. He added that Israel had undertaken the operation to prevent Syrian outposts from falling into hands of terrorist groups. At the same time, Miller pointed out that the U.S. wishes to see an Israeli withdrawal to previously agreed zones in the future.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions in the area around the negotiated Israeli-Syrian buffer zone, which potentially creates a vacuum that could have been filled by terrorist organizations that would threaten the state of Israel and would threaten civilians inside Israel. Every country has the right to take action against terrorist organizations, and every country, I think, would be worried about a possible vacuum that could be filled by terrorist organizations on its border, especially in volatile times, as we obviously are in right now in Syria.
China has deployed its Navy fleet of some 90 ships near Taiwan. Taiwanese authorities have expressed security concerns over the drills.
This number of Chinese Navy and Coast Guard ships in the region was indeed very alarming, and how they are scattered beyond the eastern border of Taiwan between the first and second island chain. I think China's intention is very clear. Until now, we still haven't seen any announcement from China or the People's Liberation Army regarding the drills. Therefore, it is still a regular training. But using a large number of troops for regular drills in such an extended area like this, I think we need to not just closely monitor whether the military trainings will turn into war. We also have to watch the influence and impact it could bring to neighboring countries.
The oldest tablet inscribed with the 10 Commandments is going on sale in New York City. The item is 1,500 years old, and its estimated worth is between $1 and $2 million.
Before you is a stone dating back over 1,500 years. It dates to the late Roman Byzantine period. It is inscribed in Paleo-Hebrew script in 20 lines, the verses of the 10 Commandments. It is a text that underpins our moral code. It is familiar to millions of people worldwide. And in 20 lines, it tells us about our shared values. This marble tablet, inscribed with the 10 Commandments, has been absolutely electrifying. People have come in here and stood next to it. You can feel the power of this stone. It weighs 115 pounds. And what's interesting to me is that I discovered through research that the rabbis of the Talmud suggest that this is exactly the same dimensions as the stone that Moses would have carried down from the mountain, the original 10 Commandments. It's been thrilling to work with this object of antiquity. There is no other stone like it in private hands. It is the only time that this will ever be available for sale to the public. All the other pieces are either small fragments. They are in museums in Israel. One is in Leeds, but this is it. This is the opportunity to own the earliest tablet of the 10 Commandments.
And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you for tuning in, and please remember to stay here on TVP World for more news and features coming in just a moment.